This webinar is called What is a Bob? Why do we need them? What are they? When do we call them? And how on earth does the conductor know how to do that? To start with, we're going to look at a lead of plain hunt. How many rows in a lead of plain hunt? Well, it's 10. How many possible changes are there on 5? Factorial 5, 120. So plain hunt is just not generating enough rows. So what we do is we look at when the treble is leading and we introduce a different change, a different transition from the hand stroke to the backstroke. Instead of it going from 1, 3, 2, 5, 4 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we leave the third where it is, cross those two, leave the fourth where it is, and we generate 1, 3, 5, 2, 4. If we then repeat that 4 times, or 3 times, we get back to rounds. So with the simplest possible pattern, and using one altered change, we've turned the 10 rows of plain hunt into 40 rows of plain bob doubles. But that is still not enough. So we need to do something different to get from 40 rows to 120. We need to triple the length. And this is the different change that we use, and we call it a bob. Instead of the backstroke at the first lead end being 1, or any lead end, instead of the backstroke being 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, it becomes 1, 2, 3, 5, 4. We've swapped 3 bells over from where they would have expected to be. It's tripled, and that's important because we need to make it 3 times as long. There is, of course, some scope for confusion here. The word bob is used twice, and it's a different meaning from when we use it in plain bob. I mean, it's historical and from a long time ago when people used the word bob just to mean dodge, and we came to use the word bob to mean a call as well. You'll just have to live with that confusion. So then looking at what we've done, and you'll see on this slide, I've cut the middle out. This is actually 40 changes of plain bob doubles, and at the end of the first course, just when it's about to come round, we call our bob, and it generates the lead end 1, 4, 2, 3, 5 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we do that 3 times, so we call bobs at the end of the leads a whole course apart, we triple the length of our course of plain bob doubles, and we've created a 120 change touch. Of course, that is the extent, and change ringing is fundamentally based on generating extent. Now, can we do the same thing in Grancer doubles? Well, how many rows in a plain course of Grancer doubles? Hopefully you can see there that it's 30. We can only get to 90 changes with only bobs, and we're going to need something else. And what we need is a different sort of call called a single. We're going to have a look at exactly what bobs and singles in Grancer look like a little bit later on. This is just to show that we do need 2 types of call to get extents in the simplest of methods. If we want to use these simple methods, and that's important because simple methods enable us to ring plain courses and get to learn things. But if we want lots of changes, or indeed all of them, we need calls. Bobs and singles are types of call. So we've answered our question why we need bobs and singles. Without calls, simple methods can't generate enough rows. And we need simple methods because we have to start somewhere. Simple methods enable us to ring short touches. They enable us to learn. Theoretically, we could create methods that generated extents with no calls, but they'd be just too difficult. Having calls also enriches the ringing experience. It means we can generate rows that we want in a touch without having to ring all of them. And of course, it means that for us teachers, we can have the pleasure of teaching our students how to ring a method, and then just when they think they've got to the end, we pull the rug from under their feet, make it harder again, and say, "Ha-ha! Now you've got to learn the calls." We're going to move now on to what. I've already touched on this, but we're going to look at it method by method. And we're going to focus on these 2 types of call, the bob, a call that changes 3 bells, and the single, a call that swaps two bells. If you get into doubles variations in particular, you'll come across a couple of other different types of call, the extreme and the omit, but that's beyond the scope of this webinar. Key thing to note here, though, is that the effect of calls is different in different methods. So let's have a look at plain bob doubles. As we've said before, we don't have singles in plain bob doubles, we don't need them. The key thing here in plain bob doubles is that the dodge that we're expecting to see in 3-4 at the lead end doesn't happen. So have a look at the bell that's coming down from the back. It's the second in this case, highlighted in coloured blue. At the end of the first lead of bob doubles, a second would be expected to dodge 3-4 down. At the bob, the 3-4 down dodge is missed, and the second just runs straight in, and ends up in the same position that it started the lead. It will do 3-4 dodge next time. Have a look at the fifth here. The fifth at the end of the first lead would be expecting to dodge 3-4 up. When the bob's called, the fifth does 2 blows in fourths. It doesn't dodge back to thirds. 2 blows in fourths and goes back in. The last bell to consider is the third, which is the bell coming down to lead before the treble. The third would be expecting to make seconds, but at the bob, the third does what we call running out. It misses out the second, ends up in third's place at backstroke. Third then follows the treble, leads again, and makes seconds again. So those two bells, that bell has ended up doing the same thing that it had done the previous lead. So that's all there is to it, bobs in plain bob doubles. 3 different things to remember. And the fourth here, the bell that's doing long fourths, is what we call unaffected. The only thing to note when you are ringing the fourth is your middle 2 blows, that handstroke and that backstroke, which when you're ringing a plain course, you'd expect to see different bells below you. You make fifths, over the same bell. Now let's have a look at granza doubles. This is a little bit more difficult because we have 2 different types of call. This is the first one. This is what happens at a bob. And let's have a look at each bell in turn and what happens to them. If you're making thirds, the fifth in this example, you're unaffected. You make thirds, go back in as before. If you're the bell that's going to dodge 4-5 up, which is the blue fourth in this example, you make an early thirds and then go into the hunt. If you're the bell that's in the hunt, the second in this example, you double dodge 4-5 down and come out of the hunt. If you're about to dodge 4-5 down, you double dodge 4-5 up. So the bob is happening before the lead end, a little bit earlier than it happens in plain bob. Notice how 2 bells are double dodging in 4-5 together, while 2 different bells make thirds below them. The single has some similarities. The 2 bells doing a double dodge 4-5 at the back are the same. The bell that's in the hunt and the bell that was going to dodge 4-5 down. Double dodge together. Notice now the bell that's in third place is the same. So a different thing is happening in 2-3. The bell that was going to be unaffected and make thirds makes seconds and leads again. The bell that was going to do 4-5 up makes long thirds and goes in. 4 blows in thirds, backstroke, handstroke, backstroke, handstroke. The single has swapped 2 bells over compared with the bob. At a single, the difference is 1 bell makes seconds, just as it does in the plain lead. The bells in 3-4, instead of dodging, they make places around each other, which essentially swaps them over. Remember, a single swaps 2 bells. Well, it swaps these 2 that are dodging in 3-4. In all these instances, the 2 bells dodging in 5-6 behind are unaffected. There's some detail here that you can study in your own time. The detail of what each bell does at a bob and at a single. Now, step and doubles. This is a step up in terms of difficulty and excitement. Step and doubles has singles, not bobs. If you remember from an earlier slide, I said that the plain course of step and doubles has 60 changes, 60 rows long. We need to double it, so 2 singles will turn 60 changes into 120 changes. Actually, those singles are called 60 changes apart. Now, the single swaps a pair of bells. And which pair does it swap? Well, it swaps 2 bells which are double dodging 4-5 together. It swaps that pair. That's much easier than swapping a pair that's on the front. And how it does it is that one bell, in this instance the third, has just done its double dodge 4-5 up. It's going to do a double dodge 4-5 down. And what it does is what's sometimes called coat hangers. It does a point fourths, then it comes back to fifths and do 2 blows. Then it does a point fourths again, back to fifths, and then we'll carry on with a double dodge 4-5 down. The other bell fits around it. It's come out from the front, might have been quick or slow. It comes up to start to do its double dodge 4-5, but it can't. So it does a single blow in fifth place, a point, comes back into fourths, 2 blows in fourths, another point in fifth place, that'll be a hand stroke, and then goes back in the same way that it came out. That's important to remember. Singles in step and doubles cause you to go back in the same way that you go out. And that maneuver, the point, place, point, and in, is usually called cat's ears. And that's why it looks like a cat's ears. Personally, I'm not convinced that coat hangers look like coat hangers, and some people call them castles, but that's where we are. There's a bit of detail about what happens at singles in step and doubles. See how underlined is go in the way it came out. Now, step and triples is unfortunately a bit different to step and doubles. Most methods, when you extend them, the bobs are the same. This is one example where the bobs are different. What happens on the left hand side, we can see a normal 6 end. These are the bells double dodging in 4-5. These are the bells double dodging in 6-7 before and after the end of the 6. What happens at a bob is the bell that's double dodging 4-5 up makes fifths, double dodges 4-5 down and goes back in. And in this instance, goes back in a different way to the way it came out. The bells that have just double dodged 4-5, 6-7 up do another dodge and then do another double dodge 6-7 up. They do 5 dodges in total across the 6 end. The single has the same effect in 4-5. Bell double dodging 4-5 up makes fifths, double dodges 4-5 down. But the 2 bells at the back, one of them is completely unaffected and the other fits around it. So the bell doing double dodge 6-7 up does the 2 dodges, makes sevenths, but over the same bell, double dodge 6-7 down and in. The bell fitting round it ends up staying at the back for really quite a long time, because it's just done double dodge 6-7 up, makes sevenths, double dodge 6-7 down, makes sixths, double dodge 6-7 up, makes sevenths, double dodge 6-7 down and in. And you can't be sure that there isn't going to be a single at the end of that, which would cause you to feel as if you've been at the back forever. So that's the difference. Step and doubles, step and triples. When there's a call, it causes you to go in a different way. In step and doubles, you come in at the bob. Now we're moving on to a surprise minor method, Cambridge minor. And here what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to look at what happens at a normal lead end. You may not be familiar with Cambridge minor, but we're going to learn the principles anyway. At the lead end, at the end of the first lead here, notice that the fifth is making seconds, 2 bells are crossing in 3/4, they're dodging, and 2 bells cross in 5/6, they're dodging. At a bob, what happens across the lead end, look up here to the right, is, okay, that's the treble lead, 2 bells in 2/3 cross, and a bell makes fourths. That should be familiar. That's exactly what the bells in 1, 2, 3, 4 were doing in both plain bob doubles and plain bob minor, and that's called a fourths place bob. Don't worry about what's happening up here and down here. What's happening at the lead end, if you can isolate those 2 rows, is exactly the same as it was in bob minor. And the single, if you just isolate the 2 rows where the treble is leading, you'll see that it is exactly the same. Bell makes seconds. The 2 bells that were dodging in 3/4 make places, change direction. Essentially, they take each other's position on the line. And the 2 bells in 5/6 are unaffected. They just dodge. Going to have a look now at both a different surprise minor method and then what happens when you take them on 8. Now, when you just look at those 2 grids, Cambridge minor and London minor, in terms of what happens at the bob and single, look very different at first glance. And in fact, they feel very different when you first ring them. But if we analyse exactly what happens at the lead end, just the 2 rows where the treble is leading, you'll see some similarities. In fact, they're exactly the same. In Cambridge minor, when the treble leads, the bells cross in 2/3, bell makes fourths. Bells behind cross. And at the single, bells in 3/4 swap over. Now, look at London minor and try and ignore everything that's happening before when the treble leads. The bells are coming in from different directions, but when they get to this handstroke row and this backstroke row, what they do is exactly the same. 2 bells cross in 2/3, a bell makes fourths. Okay, it ends up going a different direction afterwards to what you'd expected in Cambridge, but fundamentally what's happening at that lead end is a fourths place bob. It's exactly the same. And when you move up to Cambridge major and London major, all that happens is the first 4 positions are affected by the call. Firsts and fourths are made, bells cross in 2/3. Thirds and fourths at the single. All these bells above just dodge, are unaffected. And here, look at London. It might all look terribly complicated, but fundamentally what's happening at the lead end is that bells crossing in 2/3, bells making fourths, making the bob, and the bells above cross. So you could say that minor is easier than major in terms of the calls. In minor, 60% of the calls are affected by the bob, whereas in major, it's less than 50%. So to summarise, we've seen that there are 2 types of call. The bob, which is a call that changes 3 bells, and the single, which is a call that swaps a pair of bells. And bobs and singles can feel quite different in different methods. Although what you come to see is that methods like plain bob, Cambridge minor, which have what are called fourths place bobs, are the same on lots and lots and lots of different methods and on all numbers. It gets easier the more you see. The next section I've called when. And this is to do with when does the bob caller or conductor say bob. This is a much shorter section than what's gone before. Looking at plain bob first of all, the call is made on this row here. It's the lead, it's the row before the treble lead. It's a backstroke row. And the row that's different to what you'd have expected is the backstroke 2 rows later. So it takes effect 2 rows later. You might think to yourself, isn't that a bit early? Why couldn't you say it during the handstroke row if it only affects the backstroke row? Well, the answer is because in method ringing, on tower bells particularly, you've got to think about when people pull. Think about the person ringing a fourth. They come down from the back. They get to this point. They put their handstroke in third place. They know they're going to put the backstroke in fourth at the dodge. So by about here, they've started to give the handstroke a little bit more pull. If you only say bob when the person has started to pull their handstroke, they're not really going to be very cheerful. So basically, you've got to call the bob to give the people affected by the call enough notice to pull this handstroke with a different weight. Grancer. Grancer is slightly different. As we saw earlier, the bob takes effect a row earlier in Grancer doubles. Consequently, we call the bob or the single, a row earlier. This is the backstroke. This is the handstroke. This is the handstroke when the treble is striking in third place, is when you call the bob. You just have to get the feel for how you say a call at handstroke if you're used to making a call at backstroke. But again, it's giving the bells who are affected by the call enough notice to do something different. And finally, how? How does the bob caller or conductor know when to make the call? Well, there are at least five different ways of doing it. We'll just have a look at them in turn. The first one is the one you probably used when you first learnt to call plain bob doubles, and you learn a pattern relative to your own bell. For instance, you may make the calls so that you run in at the first call, you run out at the second call, which will be a course later, and you make the bob at the last call. And you can call that in different orders. You can call out, then make, then in, or make, in, and out. Second way is you can learn a repeating pattern. Repeating patterns tend to work. For instance, if you call 6 leads plain, then bob, plain lead, bobbed lead, plain lead, bobbed lead, that would work for plain bob doubles and Grancer doubles. So repeating patterns, very easy way of calling touches. A third way is to learn a pattern relative to another bell. So you may be ringing one particular bell, but look at someone else and call them to run in, run out, and make, or call a bell observation. That's probably the most common thing you do. First of all, you ring an inside bell, second, third, or fourth, and you watch or listen to see when the fifth is doing its long fourth behind, and you call the bob then. So that's a degree more complicated than the first two. A fourth type is to learn a composition or a calling relative to fixed calling positions. Bit of notation here. This stands for wrong, home, wrong, home. The wrong being when the tenor in a method like plain bob minor is 5/6 up, unaffected by the call, and the home when the tenor or the sixth is 5/6 down, unaffected again. And you'll learn a touch by what a single bell, usually the tenor, is doing at subsequent calls. It's quite a short way of writing it. There's an extension of this, is that you would remember how many leads it is between these calls. So that would be 4 leads, 1 lead to the first call in bob minor, then 4 leads to the next, then 1 lead, then 4 leads. That might be written 1, 4, 1, 4. People learn that string. And the fourth one, or the last one, is to make it up as you go along. Experienced conductors know what calls do. They can see from the pattern of the bells what the coursing order is, or what combination of bobs and singles will enable you to get the touch round, and they can do it off the cuff. You'll get there. And so, in conclusion, we've looked at why we need calls. We've looked at what calls do, particularly the bob and the single. We've looked at when you call bobs. And we've looked at a few ways in which bob caller or conductor knows how to do it. I hope that's been helpful, and you're looking forward to ringing lots and lots of touches and maybe calling them yourself.